Hey there, folks. SpiffyMan255 here with you again today, and I thought today might be a good time to take my political compass test. Put out a video on labels and words that we use to ascribe to other people to basically act as pejorative terms to slight those people. And last week I put out a video and kind of delineated some of my political leanings as I perceive them. So I thought it might be neat to take one of these political compass tests and figure out where I actually land on this political spectrum. So I'm going to go ahead and take this test. Let's see. Just a few propositions to start with concerning no less how you see the country and the world. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational corporations. Well, I guess that kind of depends on what we're talking about. Like if we're talking about worldwide accessible health care, then yeah, I would agree with that. But if we're talking about, I don't know, Xboxes, I might disagree with that. I don't know. I guess we'll agree with that. Let's see. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. I kind of don't dig the way these questions are worded. This is interesting. This word always makes it really interesting because, you know, I love my country. I really do. I think the United States is fucking great. But when it's wrong, I definitely don't mind talking about when I think something's wrong. That doesn't necessarily mean I don't support my country, but I definitely don't support things that it does. I don't know, I guess I'll go agree with that. Let's see. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. And this is something that I sort of agree with. It doesn't really make sense. I don't really understand pride movements overall, right? Because I really feel like that if you have no control over it when you're there, what's the point of having pride in it? So I do agree with that to some slight degree. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. I strongly disagree with that. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Maybe for a minute, but I don't know. I think overall I disagree with that. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I would agree with that. Sometimes. Occasionally. Rarely. There's now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. This I would probably strongly agree with. I probably read too much news, but it really does seem more like entertainment than news at this point. Now, the economy. We're talking attitudes here, not the FTSE index. Alright. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I would strongly agree with that. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I would disagree with that. I think if you have a decent amount of employment, inflation doesn't have to be as big of a problem. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I strongly agree with that. Because, you know, capitalism is a toolkit. It's not a moral ideology. And all the toolkit cares about is how much money it can get. It doesn't care how it gets it. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is a fundamentally good idea. I strongly disagree with that, you commie fuck. Let's see. Next, it's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I'm going to say that I disagree with that, because if people are dumb enough to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on bottled water instead of just drinking the shit out of their sink, then that's on them. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Strongly disagree. Any commodity, any property, private property can be bought and sold to anyone else. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I wish there was a slightly agree option, because I do slightly agree. But I don't particularly care for how some people can make money off of money without providing a good or a service. But they do that through investment. So they're investing in a company that makes a good or a service, typically. So, protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I would slightly agree with that. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Well, I would disagree with that, because their social responsibility is to provide a good or service of high quality. The rich are too highly taxed. I disagree. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I would strongly disagree with that. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. I strongly agree with that. If you're going to provide a good or a service to me, and you say it does one thing, or it's supposed to do a thing, and it doesn't do that, then they should be penalized. The government should penalize them. Well, it depends on what they're misleading about, honestly, in my opinion. Maybe I'll walk that back to and agree, because government controlling it, I don't know. You know, if you got a company that says, yeah, we're protecting the environment, it turns out they're dumping fucking radioactive waste, like, the government probably should step in on that. Let's see. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I would strongly agree with that. Monopolies basically push out competitors, and I don't appreciate that. I think competitors should be able to spring up pretty much at will, at random. The freer the market, the freer the people. I agree. Now look at some of your personal social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Strongly disagree. When you make abortions illegal, people will obtain illegal abortions. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I would strongly disagree with that. The revenge cycle is not a good thing to get into. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Theaters, maybe. I think museums are a little bit more important. Like, I think, like, the National History Museum and things like that are pretty damn useful as far as educational tools and things. So I don't mind paying a few taxes to keep museums and stuff up. So, taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive. I disagree. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I strongly disagree with that. Educated society is a better society. Just that simple. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. This thing's trying to figure out if I'm a white nationalist. That's pretty funny. I strongly disagree with that. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. I wouldn't necessarily say good. I don't like this kind of moral qualifier on here. But I guess that's the point. I think sometimes children respond to corporal punishment. Some children do better than others. But I'd say overall I have to disagree. I tend to discuss things with my kids. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. I agree. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. I strongly agree. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Well, that's kind of interesting, because I don't think it's solely to find jobs. I also think it is simply to make society more educated, make them able to communicate, make them able to do all sorts of things. So I'm going to slightly disagree with that one. Let's see. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Eugenics? We're fucking talking about eugenics now in this test. I strongly disagree. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I would agree with that. Discipline ultimately works its way into a lot of other facets of your life. And if you're undisciplined, then some things are made much, much more difficult further on in life. Which, now that I'm thinking of it, I wonder if this question is talking about discipline in the way I'm thinking of it. Most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I wonder if this means accept punishment. Right? Maybe I'll disagree with that. There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Well, I certainly disagree with that. As a matter of fact, I strongly disagree with that. Now, this seems to me to be in this vein of, trying to find out if I'm a white nationalist or something like that. But the fact of the matter is that there are savage cultures and there are civilized cultures, and you can most definitely make the distinction between those two. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. I agree with that. I mean, everybody has the option to not work, but I damn sure shouldn't have to support you if you decide to not work, if you could. When you're troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I disagree. You don't want to have your head in the clouds and have an issue that needs to be dealt with. Let's see. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. I disagree with that. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. I disagree with that, because some corporations can deal in certain things that make certain products inaccessible to the average person. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. I disagree with that. I think some things like public access networks and things like that can still be helpful, even though they're basically going the way of the dinosaur thanks to social media. How do we see the wider society? Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counter-terrorism. I disagree. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Well, yeah, it also invites totalitarianism, which is not good. I disagree. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. I've said this before. I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't give a shit if they're looking. What's the worst thing they're going to see? Me walking around my house without a shirt on? I don't care. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I've always been on the fence about the death penalty, and I do like how this test is set up to avoid fence sitting, because I would probably be doing it a lot. But I would tend to agree that I still support the death penalty at the moment. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. I disagree with that only slightly. I think a system of governance needs to exist, and I think hierarchies socially need to exist, and they will always exist. You cannot avoid them. Even in the most egalitarian systems that exist, they still have social hierarchies, and they cannot be avoided. My problem with this question is that you use the idea of obeyed and commanded. It's like it's trying to suggest authoritarianism over a natural hierarchy that might exist. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. I strongly disagree with that. I think anything can be considered art if the intention of it was artistic. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Strongly disagree. I think rehabilitation is the point of criminal justice. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Some criminals, maybe. Some criminals will not change, but I think the system needs to be set up so as to make an effort to rehabilitate. So I'm going to strongly disagree with that. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Well, that depends on what we're talking about here, isn't it? If we're talking about a third world country, then the business person and manufacturer are damn sure more important than the writer and the artist. But you're not going to find many writers and artists in third world countries. Not many. Not compared to civilized Western culture, quote unquote. So, I'm going to somewhat agree. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. I strongly disagree with that. I support stay-at-home dads. Go stay-at-home dads. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. I don't even know what the fuck this question is trying to ask me. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Disagree? Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. I'm going to disagree with that because I feel like as you get more mature, you should, in fact, have less peace with the establishment. I'm pretty anti-establishment most of the time. If you got through that okay, you'll find these propositions on religion a breeze. Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly disagree. You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagree. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Now this one's interesting. This one is pretty interesting because I kind of bounce back and forth, but I tend to lean towards charity. Mostly because charity relies on goodwill, and Social Security is a forced system that forces people to pay for things. Now the idea is that with Social Security, people can't back out. But also with Social Security, the people who are forced to pay resent having to pay. Now, one thing that I would argue is that a lot of times, like with celebrities and things like that who give large quantities of money to charities, they tend to give to societies and civilizations outside of their own country. So, you know, people giving to Doctors Without Borders or digging the wells over in the Congo or whatever, you know. They tend to send that money out instead of taking care of the people within the country that they live in. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's back and forth. But overall, I think I lean towards charity over Social Security. Some people are naturally unlucky. Well, I think some people get dealt a raw hand in the beginning, but I wouldn't necessarily equate it to luck. It's important that my child's school instills religious values. Strongly disagree. In case you can't tell, I'm not very religious. Finally, a look at sex. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. I strongly disagree. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Strongly agree with that. We got a little bit of data coming in about this, actually, and it turns out that children raised by same-sex couples are pretty much working out the same as kids raised by a mother and a father. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. I strongly agree. Get your porn. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. I strongly agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Strongly disagree. They're born that way, baby. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. I strongly disagree. Now let's see where I stand. In the introduction, we explain the inadequacies of the traditional left-right line. Dun, 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 dun. Alright, we got this. I'm familiar with this test, so I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but we can see that you've got authoritarian at the top, libertarian at the bottom. So this is more authority, this is more free life, and then left and right on economics. So then we got some examples. Stalin's here, Hitler's here up in authoritarian, Thatcher, and Friedman and Gandhi are right around here. Let's see. Neocons and neolibs. My political compass, I am pretty much center-left libertarian. That's where it shows me. And let's see. Okay, yeah, whatever. So yeah, this is me. Economic left-right, minus 2.38. Social libertarian authoritarian, minus 4.72. So yeah, it looks like I am a center-left libertarian. And that's about where I would put myself, I think. I'm surprised I came out as libertarian as I have. I don't know. That's probably changed a bit in the last couple years as I've been getting more and more into politics and looking into, just political discourse. But no, this is pretty interesting. I think this kind of represents me fairly well. And the test overall, I think the questions were kind of a pain in the ass, but they were kind of designed to be, and they were worded really specifically. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll try to do this again some other point in the future and see if I still maintain this same spot. We'll try to get some replication on this test. But, no, that's pretty interesting. Pretty neat. So, alright guys, that's my political compass test. I guess now I can call myself a center-left libertarian. Thanks for hanging out. Love you guys. Bye.